Welcome back to Wellness Wave Radio. Thanks for tuning in this morning to ride the wave with us. Each week our goal is to give you at least one suggestion that will make your life a little better. My name is Phil George. I'm a clinical biochemist, a certified personal trainer, and a health coach. Please remember that everything we discuss in the show is for informational purposes only. And we have a really exciting show for you today. We've got Meg with us. And Meaghan and I actually did a radio show last Saturday, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so what we're going to do, Meaghan kind of went into her whole story about ADHD and, you know, her struggles with it and I think how she overcame it and got off of medication. So I think that's really important. But a lot of stuff in science and basically in neurology is a lot of it's theory. So we have the live person here that's actually experienced it. So I have a bunch of slides we're going to go over, and it goes over the whole thing about, you know, things to watch out for. But I think I mentioned on the show, Meg, that I was shocked to hear that you even had ADHD because I just didn't see any of the telltale signs. I mentioned before, my wife's got ADHD and my daughter's got severe ADHD. So I deal with this almost on a daily basis. But I think it's a whole thing they say with autism. When you met one autistic kid, you met one autistic kid because each one's a little bit different. Is that kind of what you see on as far as the ADHD?
Yeah, so definitely because there are other people in my family and in my life that have ADHD and none of us are. We have similarities, but none of us are exactly the same.
In fact, you should mention that because when I was researching this whole thing, what I found was if you have a family member with ADHD, you're a lot more likely to have it yourself. So that's very common, especially if a really close relative, like mother, father, you know, brother, sister, that type of stuff. So there's definitely a genetic component in this. So that's one of the big things. So it's you know, it's like the same thing. I think with autism, they say basically that if you have a child with autism, more than likely one of the parents are a scientist for whatever reason. So it's something to do obviously with the neural network. Okay, so we're going to go over a bunch of slides, and I want your feedback on this because you're kind of the expert because you deal with this. Just to back up, so. This is me. These are different societies I belong to, and as a biochemist, what I want to understand what they call the root cause of the problem. Okay, why don't we go with the next slide? Okay, there's a disclaimer if you want to read it again. Okay, next slide. Okay. You can check these shows out. You can see actually on the upper right there, WCRN, that's the show that Meaghan and I were on, so you can check that out. You can go to Wellness Wave Radio on YouTube, and all the shows are on there. We're also worldwide. We're on Dreamvisions 7, obviously Leicester Cable TV, and we're also on YouTube. Okay, next slide. So this is ADHD. Actually, something that a lot of people don't know, Meg. I don't think you know either. So it used to be called ADD and ADHD, and they're too specific. I don't know if I agree with this, because I kind of more agree with what you had said. They're classifying everything now as ADHD. They're kind of taking out the ADD.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you agree with that?
Not really. I mean, when you look at the characteristics of the two different halves of it, there are definitely things that mark you as one or the other. So I feel like I agree more with the two different.
Yeah, I do too.
The separation.
There's a really famous neuroscientist out of Stanford. His name is, in fact, I listened to some of his podcasts before our interview just to you know catch up on it. And he says now they're classifying as ADHD, and I because I don't see you as being hyperactive. I mean,
not in the way that would classify me as the hyperactive side. I definitely have more characteristics of the attention deficit side.
Yeah,
so.
And that's what I see too. So I don't know why they changed it. Maybe make it easier for the psychiatrist. I don't know.
Probably.
Okay.
Well, it's for the longest time they didn't even want to diagnose it because that it never registered on any radars, or very rarely registered on radars as an actual disorder. It was always like, oh, they're just a kid. They're just hyperactive because they're a kid. They don't want to focus because they're a kid. So.
And there's a lot to be said for that too. But I think the other research I did, it said I think it was 1 in 10 kids have got, if I remember correctly, 1 in 10 kids have got AD, ADHD, and out of those, 50% will resolve by the time they reach adulthood. Other thing I found was interesting because of all of our devices now, attention going back and forth. A lot of adults are developing ADD, ADHD just because the attention span. We'll get into that a little bit later on with the slides. Okay, we have the next slide. I started off, Meg. I started off looking at all of the things you're dealing with, and I said I wanted to be more positive. You know, I didn't want to just go off like this, and this. And we talked about it on the radio show. ADHD is really a superpower, and you agree with that.
Yeah.
You can just do so many things with that. And they do this with kids on the spectrum with autism too. It's the same thing. Is that, and I see some similarities because obviously a lot of kids on the spectrum, they're also hyperactive and things like that. But the other thing that they found is a lot of companies will specifically seek out kids on the spectrum to do certain jobs. They were specifically with programming. They can see something and they'll pick up little things other people would never pick up. And I think the other thing is one of the characteristics of ADD, ADHD is hyperfocused. We talked about that. So one of the things, and I heard there was one of the most famous, neurologists, Daniel Amen. One of the things he said, he helped people, with ADHD, is to find something you love to do, because you become hyper-focused on that.
Yeah.
And the other thing, things bore you easily, right?
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. I often, so just as an example, when I was younger and I would have to clean my room, if I had started cleaning my room and then I found something interesting in the mess that was my room, I would then sit down and just either play with that toy, read that book, or I used to write a lot, so I would read that short story or whatever. I would use it as an escape from doing what I was meant to be doing at the time.
The mundane jobs.
Yeah.
That you're not interested in. I mentioned on the show too. I don't know if Einstein had ADD, ADHD, or maybe he had autism. But the same thing. His parents told him, your son's never going to amount to anything. Send him to trade school because he was so bored. Because they were talking about history. He doesn't care about history. He cares about physics. You know what I mean? And that's what it is. So I think the other thing is if you have a child with ADHD. Find something that they're really interested in, because they're going to go whole hog on that. Otherwise, they're just going to zone out because they don't care about it. So again, I see that if you could be, and obviously you found your niche kind of in media, right? So you're really interested in that, and you're going to go whole hog on that. And you're interested in that. So again. It's the same thing where, find something you love to do. Okay, why don't we do the next slide? I say this a lot too with kids on the spectrum, because I work with kids on the spectrum, and you're not saying a Mac is the best or a PC is the best. They're just different. They're just different operating systems. So you just have a different operating system. They call it in the realm of kids on the spectrum. They call it neurotypical, but you're different. Doesn't mean you're worse. It just means that you're different. Just like a Mac is necessarily any better than a PC. There are different things that they use for different.
Yeah, it's called neurodivergent when you have some sort of learning disorder or something like that. I guess the now new popular term to call it is neurodivergent. So, and neurotypical is, people that don't struggle with a learning disability. So
they're kind of like dyslexia.
Yeah.
That would be, again, you're just different. And a lot of people with dyslexia are extremely successable. So again, it's just different. And it'd be pretty boring if everybody was the same in the world. So it's good to have that. Okay, why don't we do the next slide? So, actually, Meg, you got better eyes than I do. So, can you read from that? These are 6 strengths that people with ADH have.
A go-getter, your child's abundance of energy and passionate spirit is a powerful tool that helps them go after what they want in life.
You agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, how about next one? Back.
Oh.
Go back. Next one.
Creative. Your kid is a creative explorer and unafraid to think outside the box, which makes them stand out.
Agree with that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I chose a creative path, so.
Okay, back. Next.
Passionate. Your child's enthusiasm for life and what they love gives them the power to accomplish incredible things. Yep, another one that I agree with.
Okay, back.
Imaginative. Your child has a world-class imagination that exposes their creativity. Animated personality and passion for life. Yep.
Okay.
These are all.
Okay, so you agree with that. So these are, again, we're going back to the superpower. So instead of focusing on maybe what you can't do, basically you're focusing on all of your strength. So I think with anybody in life, I think what you want to do is you want to really accent your strengths and try to minimize your weaknesses. And I think that's what you've done during our interview on the radio show. You were able basically to minimize maybe not being able to concentrate as well, or maybe not finding it interesting. So what you did is you went on a career path to basically to find something that you like.
Which I don't think is too different from, I mean, neurotypical children. We just have a different set of weaknesses. In life, you always try to work more on towards your strengths as opposed to like falling, I don't want to say victim, but falling into your weaknesses. So just because I have ADHD doesn't necessarily make me too much different. It just means that I have a different set of strengths as opposed to a neurotypical person who has different strengths. I mean, my sibling, like I said, he's one of the people who, the other people that has ADHD in my family. And while I chose the creative path, he went to school for computer science and has a desire to work in robotics, which is a creative scientific course, I think, because he's always wanted to put together a robot and see it function before his eyes. It's kind of like where I would want to put together, a film or a short film or a news broadcast and see it to completion and then see it out there on the television or the interwebs or wherever it ends up going. So they're very similar paths, and when you're not neurodivergent, you're still looking to go towards your strengths as opposed to falling to your weaknesses.
But I also see the creativity part of robotics, right? Because you got to make it, you got to think about this, and this. So I think, and all that stuff, it's creative. And I don't know if you know this or not, but what Elon Musk was on Saturday Night Live and said he specifically has Asperger's. So, and obviously he's a super genius. But again, he gets obsessed with stuff, and I think, and I see the same thing. I see the same thing where you actually, not you, the plural you, basically are really obsessed with it. What makes you really, really good at certain things, because once you go down that rabbit hole, you keep following that rabbit hole as far as it will go.
The frustrating part can be sometimes, maybe your desire outweighs maybe some of the qualifications you have. So like, I had tried to get an internship through the Disney program, but at the time I didn't have the qualifications they were looking for. for the desired position I applied for. And so that was just kind of one example of where my desire to do this was kind of not cut short, but given a step back because of qualifications or what someone else is looking for a position versus what I had to offer them. So now I feel like I would have a better chance at achieving that because I've had more time to work in the industry. But yeah, that was a hurdle that I faced early on, was my qualifications and, you know, the experience that I had doing what I wanted to do. So.
Yeah, but but you realized, you know, that's what you needed, and you got it. You got the degree. So and again, most employers a lot of times will look for a specific degree. So even though you had the passion for it, you didn't have the credentials. You didn't have the diploma behind you. But interesting, a lot of big tech companies like Google and stuff, they'll actually go to college and pay kids to drop out of college because they see the potential in this kid. What was it? Was it Bill Gates? A bunch of them basically started a business in their dorm room and actually wind up dropping out of college anyway. So college is all fine and good, but it's not the be all and end all. So they missed out on you, Meaghan. They had a chance to get a blooming star. So
yeah,
they missed out on you. Okay. What's the next slide? Okay, Meaghan, again, why don't you read these?
Okay. Common signs of ADHD in adults: lack of focus, disorganization, forgetfulness, distraction. Oh gosh, taking hits. Restlessness, irritability, impulsivity, excitability, low frustration tolerance, boredom, making careless mistakes, poor time management, poor stress management, and hot temper.
So what do you think about that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I have experienced all of those in at least one, we'll call it an era of my life.
And I think during the radio show we talked about when you were on the whole medication thing, and then I remember you saying you were yelling at your friends and stuff like that. Can you go over that quickly?
So a lot of people think it's going to be Adderall that I'm talking about, but it wasn't. It was, I don't remember the name of it, but I know it wasn't Adderall. But the side effects were similar to that of some people on Adderall, where I just felt extremely angry all the time, and it seemed like I was taking it out on my friends, and it got to the point where it was spiraling into fights with my friends, not physical fights, but verbal and emotional fights. So that was like the big motivator to stop doing it. And I quit cold turkey, which probably isn't what they recommend for medications like that, because your effectiveness in whatever it is you're doing may immediately take a hit. But I didn't want to feel angry and be fighting with my friends all the time, so I had to stop. So.
Right, and so people know, they now believe, well, they're pretty sure that really I'll have a bunch of slides ahead, but one of the main things they feel what causes ADD, ADHD is a deficient in dopamine. And for dopamine, for people who don't know, what dopamine, it's a neurotransmitter. You've probably heard of runners, they call it the runner's high. That's a dopamine thing. So what dopamine does, just a little bit of neurochemistry. So people heard of serotonin, the feel-good hormone, and the dopamine. So serotonin is basically what they call internally directed. In other words, you feel good. You just feel good. Everything's great. So you don't get depressed. And then dopamine is externally focused. So dopamine gives you the motivation to do things. You feel satisfaction. You get dopamine from gambling. You're gambling. You get that rush. It's externally focused, and serotonin is internally focused. So what they found is with people with ADHD, what happens is they don't have enough dopamine going in. That's for the lack of motivation, sometimes. But what happens, you get the super dopamine rush when you get something you really like. So that's what it is. So it's a dopamine. So what happens is with the Adderall and stuff like that, what it does is it boosts up the dopamine. Okay, we're on the next slide. Okay, you want to read that quick, Meg?
Signs of ADHD: often forgetful, time management difficulties, easily distracted, difficulties starting and finishing tasks, can be impulsive, low tolerance for boredom, may zone out in conversations, emotion dysregulation.
Okay, makes sense? Okay, next. Okay, so basically, you should probably collect. I'd like your phrase better, Meg. The neurotypical brain, as opposed to what word did you use?
Neurodivergent.
Neurodivergent brain. So again, I don't know about the normal. Not many people are patient organ. I don't know. We could argue about that. But then obviously the distraction, the daydreaming, confusion, the hyperactivity. Okay, next slide. Okay, what makes it different? Okay, next slide. Okay, so if you see the yellow part, that's called the prefrontal cortex, the big yellow thing there, and that's what they call executive function. So that's what happens with that part. If you be able to make decisions and things like that. That's kind of one of the problems with some people with ADHD in terms of, they get impulsive and things like that. And sometimes this doesn't work as well as it should. And then I can't see the PCC in the back, the red thing. Meg, what does that say below there?
Emotional integrator.
Okay, so this takes in terms of how you regulate your emotions. And at the very bottom there, that's called the amygdala. And the amygdala is part of the brain that basically that's part of what they call the limbic system. That's the fight or flight. So in other words, when that gets activated, you want to run away from the tiger. So again, what happens with the brain with somebody with ADHD, what's happening, that wiring is a little bit messed up. So sometimes it goes back and forth. Okay, next slide. Okay, Meg, why don't you read the prefrontal cortex?
Prefrontal cortex functions as an intersection for attention, behavior, and emotional responses. For people with ADHD, attention is switched easily. Okay,
again, that's good. That's kind of like, I make a joke sometimes when I go into the gym. I go, look at the butterfly. It's like, it's all of a sudden you go from here to somewhere else. Okay.
It's like in the movie Up, Doug, the dog. He just squirrel.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to that. Can you read the basal ganglia?
Basal ganglia, neural circuit system that regulates communication within the brain. In the ADHD brain, a short circuit can cause inattention or impulsivity.
Okay, again, that's something else. Wired. Okay, back to that again. We already covered the limbic system. And how about the, I can't even read that.
Reticular activating system. The major relay system between the brain's pathways. A dopamine deficiency may cause impulsivity and hyperactivity.
Again, so dopamine kind of also regulates a lot of that stuff going on in your brain. So it's kind of, I like to think about it, we talked a lot about, even when we went on a radio show, it's all electronics, right? It's all, all your brain is basically is an electrical system. So maybe your wires are kind of touching or something like that, and you go back and forth. Okay, next slide. Okay, can you read this, Meg?
Two sides of ADHD. I have trouble focusing, fun with a lively character, and I overthink decisions, and the
okay,
orange.
So it's supposed to be, you go from the left, and then that's one part, and then go to the right. So I have trouble focusing, then to the right, what it says.
Oh, okay, I see. I have trouble focusing, but I still somehow spend my day concentrating on a mentally draining game. I do that a lot. fun with a lively character, but I feel like my mental age never seems to align with others.
I don't know what that means. Can you know what that means? I couldn't figure out exactly what that means.
I mean, I can take a guess, but I also was a lot older than, or not a lot, but I was older than people in the after school, extracurriculars that I was doing because of my age. I would imagine it kind of means that you fit into a certain group of people, whether it's people who are older than you or people who are younger than you, socially, I would imagine.
You mean that you can, if I understand you correctly, you mean that you can relate to people older than you, but also people younger than you?
No, so you either one or. So like all of my friends in school, or outside of school, I'm sorry, all of my friends outside of school were younger than me because when I was playing soccer, I was at the age where I got an extra season. So everyone that I played with was younger than me because of where I was. And I got along with them and like, I suppose it would be related to them a little more than I did the older kids in my actual school. Plus, I think I'm a little biased on that because my brother is 4.5 years younger than me, and he was my first ever playmate, as you would say. So, having someone that close to me, a lot younger than me, that I saw regularly, kind of pushed me towards having like a better relationship with my friends who were younger than me as opposed to my friends who were older than me, it seemed.
Okay, go back to that slide. And how about the bottom one, Meg?
I overthink decisions, but I can be reckless and impulsive. Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, I overthink a lot, and a lot of times it causes like anxietal responses. But you know, in the context of we're on vacation and we don't have a plan, we're just going to go do whatever we think is going to be fun today, like that I can do. But like, if I send a text message and the person that I sent it to doesn't respond quickly, I'm like, oh gosh, did they think I was rude? Did they just not see it yet? Should I send another one? Should I just wait? So I overthink small decisions, but in the long run, I mean, I'm down for whatever, like on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is going back into the nervous system. It's the brain, but it's also how the brain connects to different parts of the nervous system. Okay, next slide. Okay, this I found interesting. There's different words for this. There's different ways of thinking. They call the diffuse thinking, which is basically you're just vegging out, right? You're just doing this. And the other one is called focused. I've also heard that referred to as task. So what happens is what they're saying, one of the issues with people with ADHD is sometimes they go back and forth with that a lot of times. But I'm guessing, you correct me if I'm wrong because you're the expert, I'm thinking that maybe if it's just stuff you don't care that much about, so you kind of maybe are focused, but then you kind of veg out.
Mm-hmm. So earlier in your slides, they talked about like how you can be focused and then lose your focus, or like you're in a conversation and you zone out, so to speak. It's not that I'm not interested like in what a person is saying. It's just my brain is over here somewhere, and I can still check back into that conversation and know everything or the basic cliff notes of everything you said to me, but I'm not honed in on your conversation. Unless it's extremely important for me to be honed in on your conversation, like you're giving me directions or instructions on something that it is imperative that I don't mess up, I can focus 100% on that and get it correct. But if we're just chatting, my brain can be in separate places at once.
I'm assuming that's unless you found something very interesting.
Yes.
I mean, if you find it interesting, then you're zoned in. That makes sense. Okay, next slide. Okay, so again, the default mode, again, network with ADHD, which is basically, we talked before, is kind of like just, you're not really concentrating on anything. It's just kind of, your mind is just all over the place. Okay, next slide. Okay, want to read this, Meg?
Natural remedies for ADHD: supplements, physical exercise, therapy, mindfulness, meditation, diet changes, being in nature, healthy sleep schedules, oh goodness, electroencephalographic
Perfect.
biofeedback.
That's EEG. Have you ever had an EEG done?
No.
Okay, they put these things in your head, and they look at you, and they look at your different brain waves. That's one of the ways that they diagnose epilepsy, because you've got obviously something going on with there. So what they do is they put this, and this is what they call biofeedback. So you got these things in your head. You can see again when you're in beta state, theta state, all this stuff over here. And what they found is, by you looking at that, if you concentrate, and you're probably good at this, is basically you can change your brain waves in terms of what's happening. So it's a way, basically, if you really needed to focus, that you'd be able to kind of zone it. It's kind of like retraining your brain. So we got the note here. We're coming up on the end of the show. Anything you want to just say to the audience out there, parents with kids with ADHD, or anybody in terms of even adults with ADHD?
Yes. So just because medication didn't work for me doesn't mean it can't work for other people. I know I've heard a lot of success stories with adults who have found that taking ADHD medication makes their days easier, but it did for me until it didn't. And that's where I made my decision to get off of it. But don't think that just because I got off of it or someone in your life got off of it, that you also have to work towards getting off of it. If it's genuinely helping you, then do what makes your life easier and your life better.
Yeah, good advice. And the other thing I want to mention, this is going to go all over the world now, because I go on Dreamvisions 7. It's going to be on YouTube. So we'll have a lot of listeners. And anybody that has any questions, email me, philgeorge@charter.net, and I'll just shoot them over to Megan. If Megan has the time and is willing to help you, because I mean, she's the expert. She's been, well, you are. You've been through it. The rest of the stuff is all theory, which is all fine and good. It's more than theory. They've done a lot of studies on this, because ADHD is a very big issue now. But everybody has dealt with a certain amount of disabilities in their life, whatever that happens to be. You have to find a way to deal with it and go with life. And again, I think known Megan for a while now, and I can tell you she's doing really well. She keeps me on task over there, yelling at me all the time to do the right stuff. So Meg, thanks so much. Thanks so much for coming on, and
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back next week. Thanks, guys.